Today we have an exciting topic, which I'd say I'm hearing more and more about, but very few in the industry have conquered this strategy and implemented it. But both Niati and Ragu are two that I know leading in the industry around building a digital first learning strategy in organization. Um, Lots of organizations are in different places in their journey, maybe really early on. Very few are far along their journey. So we thought it would be a good topic to cover today. I'm getting asked a lot from people in the industry about how to build a digital first learning strategy and what the organization needs to look like, what kind of roles, tools, people are needed in order to do it. So today we're going to talk about what it really means. Even myself, as I met with Ragu and Niati to prep for the webinar, I was asking them some clarifying questions myself. So we want to talk about what it means, what the trends look like, and the steps to building a digital learning strategy, some of the key roles and stakeholders needed, how Niati and Ragu both advocated for this within their organizations and got the buy-in and approval across the organization to do it. Some of the challenges and obstacles, that's all the juicy stuff around digital transformation and how to overcome that. And then the value that they're seeing. So feedback that they're getting from either their team, learners, and the organization around what they built. So to start, of course, we want to do intros. And so I'm going to ask Niati for you to start and Ragu to follow. But maybe just share a bit about your background, what company you're at and what your company does. And then we'll get right into the questions.
Okay.
To you, Niati.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me on this, Sarah. I really appreciate it. So hi, everyone. I'm Niyati Shah. I'm the Senior Director of Digital Success here at GitLab. GitLab is responsible for the DevSecOps transformation, and it's a DevSecOps platform. So my predominant audience at the moment are developers, are extremely technical individuals, including security folks. Just a little bit about me. Prior to joining here, I was at Lacework, which is a security company, and then prior to that, spent a decade at MongoDB building out customer product adoption and customer journeys there as well. So a little bit about me, and I'm based right outside of, a fun fact, I'm based right outside of New York City. I live in a town called West New York, New Jersey.
You're close by. You're not too far.
So directionally, it's the right name for the town.
Very cool. Okay, over to you, Ragu.
Well, thanks, Sarah. Well, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. And Sarah, thank you for arranging this important conversation. I think it's great that we could all be together to talk about all these great topics today. I'm Raghu. I'm the Vice President of Education at MongoDB, and I joined here about 3 years ago. Niati and I did not overlap. I joined literally when Niati, I think, moved on to another role. But prior to MongoDB, I was at Oracle for nearly 30 years, and 20 of those years were in the education space. So I've kind of seen the education industry evolve a lot over the years. At MongoDB, I oversee all of our product documentation, MongoDB University, which is our online training function, our academia function, which is our outreach to colleges and universities, and also a new area called MongoDB Press, which is a collection of technical books that we're writing right now. So we're really kind of all things education, and I am out of the San Francisco Bay Area. So nice to be here.
Awesome. Can you imagine if both of you overlapped? The magic you could make in the learning
I
space?
know. We missed each other. I know.
For the future.
Yes, for the future, for sure.
Okay, awesome. So thanks for the intros, and we're going to dive right into to some of the great discussion. But first, I wanted to start with your definitions of what a digital first learning strategy is. And my question was, do you think about it in terms of what you deliver to the learner for the learning program, or the digital first strategy internally, or both. And then we'll get into where you're at on your journey. So Niyati, we'll start with you first.
Yeah, definitely. So my definition of a digital first learning journey is that you're keeping intentionally designing for the new age, which is the digital age that we're in today, and thinking about digital as the primary channel on how we communicate and strategize and help with product adoption, product usage, and things of that sort. For me, I think it encompasses both how we deliver as well as what we deliver as well.
Awesome. And Raghu, your
Yeah,
definition,
it's
similar, different?
it's a great, no, it's very similar. What we say here is that we call it learner first, actually, is what we call it sometimes. And just like Niyati implied, we care about the learner first and kind of try to meet the learner where they're at and how they want to learn. Because if you think about human beings, we all learn a little bit differently. And what I like to tell people is that you can read it, meaning you can go through some kind of a content asset and read something and learn that way. You could watch it through some kind of a video experience. You could try it, which means you play with the software directly and bypass all the content because you don't want to see any of it. You can achieve it, which means that you're motivated by some kind of a badge or a certification, and that's what drives your learning behavior. Or now you can ask it. I mean, you can have a conversational learning experience. So all of that is kind of the way we look at it at MongoDB. So just offering different modalities of learning, and they all have digital in common, but having those choices, I think, is what's kind of defined how we think about it. But Niyati's right. It's in the end, it's being modern and cutting edge at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think, Raghu, I couldn't agree with you more. I think understanding where the learners are and how, I think COVID has changed the amount of attention span that we have and how we adopt different products. So couldn't agree with you more on some of the highlights that you said. I think that's gold. If anyone that's here on the webinar, focus on that piece.
Yeah, and for sure we'll create some tips and tricks out of this webinar that we'll publish as well. So I really like that framework, Raghu, that you just kind of walked through. That's easy to understand and good. And hopefully we'll get into, I know when we were prepping for the webinar, we talked a little bit about the ask it piece, which I thought was really interesting, kind of like training the robots, thinking differently about the training. So lots of exciting things to come. Now next we'll go, and I will mix it up in terms of order, but Niyati, we're going to go with you first again. So maybe just tell us a little bit about where you are in your journey with your digital first strategy. I know you'll tell us about when you landed at GitHub, you really had this vision already in place. And so it's a matter of starting to build it. But where are you in that journey? And then how did you get started?
Sure. So where we are in that journey is not far enough where I would want to be at the moment. And I think this next year is going to be that pivotal point because I've spent the last, 1 year building that foundation. So when I joined GitLab, I saw an opportunity to revolutionize how we approach, customer education, how we thought about product adoption. And some of the key areas for me is embracing this digital first. What I mean by that is having, self-paced learning that is on demand, that is virtual, giving users the ability to, if they learn by doing, as Raghu was mentioning, having tutorials that they can follow along. The other piece is that we focused on last year was ensuring that there is federated search on the platform because we wanted to make sure that we have some of these disjointed places where information resides that users want. We also wanted to ensure that there was like deep embedded link within our documentation because that's the first place that users go to. It is one of our highly visited websites. So we want to make sure that when they're looking at different modalities that they have them at my end. The one thing is to, yes, let's embrace the async learning process, whichever way it may it be hands-on, may it be reading, may it be watching. but our approach is very much data driven. I'm a data nerd at heart. And so we ensure that we're looking at that perspective of like, what is our CSAT for the content? Is it resonating with them? What feedback are we getting from learners? Is it really moving the needle on customer adoption that we're hoping for? And again, before coming into GitLab, the focus within GitLab is very much internal focus. We want to drive product adoption from our perspective, but that's not how customers look at it. So the one main change that we made is we focused on customer outcomes. I may think that you're not using the product enough, but the customer might be completely satisfied with the adoption of the platform where they are today and may not have a need for additional use case adoption for maybe another year or two. So I'll just say that, like data driven, just ensuring that we implemented best practices when we went in.
Awesome. And where would you say, I don't know, 1 to 10, 10 is like achieving your vision. Where do you think you sit in terms of where you're at in the journey today?
Yeah, I think I want to say somewhere between a 7 and a 7.5 at the moment.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Niyati and GitLab, one to watch. Awesome. Okay, and Raghu, over to you. I know you are also fairly far along in your journey. Where would you say you're at, and how did you get started as well?
Yeah. So, as I mentioned, I joined MongoDB about 3 years ago, and my sort of marching orders, if you will, was to essentially rebuild the education department here at the company. And the way I kind of went about it was I wanted to get that C-suite alignment right from the beginning, is kind of the way I went at it. And so I spent the first few months of my time here really spending time with our C-suite and just trying to understand what their expectations were of the education department and kind of bring in my expertise and sort of marry those two things together. And it's time well spent, by the way. For those of you that have not done that, I really encourage you to do that because it really makes your life a lot simpler down the road. And so just as a casual observation, most people who look at education think of it in terms of assets. They think of it in terms of a course catalog, or maybe it's some hands-on labs or some exams or some quizzes and what have you. And that's fine. I mean, that is in the end a lot of what we offer to people to consume. But I think it's really important to recast education as a strategic vehicle. So for me, working with the C-suite was not about we didn't talk about assets at all. What we talked about instead, we were saying things like, who is our primary audience? How do we find more of those kinds of people? Why do we care about these people? What do they need to learn? How can we get them to drive more product usage, like Niyati implied? And then where do we go for new markets? What country should we focus on? So that type of a conversation, the way I just described it, is very different than saying, I'm going to build 5 courses, I'm going to build 5 exams. That's an entirely different conversation. So for us, for me, recasting it that way made education a very strategic vehicle here at MongoDB. And what that did is once we got to that common understanding of, okay, we agree on all these sort of goals, then when you ask for money or ask for headcount or whatever it might be, you're asking it in that context. You're using business language. So as an example of business language, my opening statement about MongoDB education to my execs is that we reach 1.3 million learners a month. That's my opening statement. And so that's kind of how we start, and then the dialogue kind of goes from there. So I don't, a course may come up in my 10th sentence as in the conversation. So that's
Yeah.
the point I want to make. So again, I respect the work we do to build courses. I'm in it with everybody here to do that, but just recognize the importance of the business end. So that's the journey we're on. And where we are right now is, we're also at about a 7.5 and 8 in terms of our overall journey, where we are. I'm very proud of the journey we've taken to rebuild, and I think we've picked off all the low-hanging fruit on the tree, and now we're reaching for the tougher goals, which is kind of where we want to be. So
Amazing. So yeah, once you both get to 10, we'll have to redo the webinar and say,
that's right.
okay, now tell us. So Raghu, just on that, coming from Oracle and moving into MongoDB, different. But what did your training program look like when you started at MongoDB, and then compared to what it looks like now, which you've started to describe, and then of course, where you want to go to get to that 10 or that full vision?
Yeah, it's such a great question. So, when I came into MongoDB, we had an original catalog of courses. We also had a homegrown LMS system. So a lot of things were built as a result of the company just growing from a startup and going through a bit of a rocket ship rise, if you will, for the first 10 plus years when Niadi was here. And we kind of got to a point where we need to sort of rethink our overall education strategy. And so, just to double click on my executive conversations, what we agreed from those chats was we agreed on some guiding principles of how we want to run an education business here in this company. And I encourage all of you to have a similar conversation alignment with your senior leadership. So for us, we agreed on a few things. One was we agreed that it's going to be a free and frictionless business. What that means is we want education to not only be free, but we also want it to be frictionless, meaning you don't even need to tell us who you are to look at our content. Our content's available to you anonymously. And what that did for us, it really opened up the funnel in terms of the number of people who consume content, because people don't like to give their login information. It's always a challenge to get people to start learning. So that philosophy really comes from the open source roots of MongoDB. So I think that was very powerful. The second grounding philosophy for us was quality. We just said that we're going to always build high quality content. Now that sounds very obvious, why wouldn't you do that? But it's actually quite amazing because it's quite easy to forget quality as time goes by. And so we're very fanatical about it. We actually have a 5-star rating system on every asset that we have, every video, every lab, every quiz, and we have thousands of input data coming in every month. And if we're not above 4.5 stars out of 5, we correct it. So there's a high
Okay.
degree of quality. And the reason for that is because the belief is if you have high quality, then the learners will come. And that's the philosophy. And that's largely played out for us. So use quality as one of your North Star metrics is probably my advice. Being modular is important. Remember, our learners are time poor. Time is the biggest competitor for us. It's not another company, it's time. And so coming up with small chunks of learning, I think is really, really important. And the last thing I'd say is just like Niadi, I'm catered to developers too. So having a hands-on experience is really important. We agree to that. And the last thing is that we also agreed that not all of our learners need to come to my site to learn, meaning they can go to a partner site, they can go to LinkedIn, they can go to Coursera. So we're comfortable with the idea of syndicating our content, meaning let's put our content in other places so that learners can find them. They don't have to come to us. So what that does is it expands your reach and lets you go to other places. So these are some of we call them guiding principles here of what it means to what that alignment yielded. And all of our tactics kind of come off of these guiding principles. So that's the journey, Sarah, that we've been on, to kind of get to where we are.
Awesome. And what do you think? What are some, are you just going to continue to refine these pieces to get to, the 10, or are there additional things you're looking at doing?
There are additional things, so the reason I gave myself a 7.5 or 8 is because the goalpost has moved. So the thing is, as you achieve things, new objectives come into play, and we can talk about AI and some other things. So the goal is to really refine and enhance our strategy, more learning experiences, more individualized learning, and try to get as close as possible to almost like as personal of a learning experience as you can get to. So for us, that's the journey that we're on, right now.
Awesome. It's amazing that you get all that feedback on your training. That's like the age-old battle. But if you make
Yeah,
it easy with the stars, maybe that's what you do, like being digital
that's right.
first. It's easy to say, yeah, I liked this piece of learning. Then it's easy for people to click. Just one more question, Regu, on what you talked about. What's a tip for all of us on how to get to that buy-in meeting? That might be a challenge
So
sometimes.
yeah, no, it's very important. I think the first step is, if you're leading a team or running a business, try to think through, try to understand what's important to the company. And you can discover that by talking to your peers, by talking to other VPs, and really get that sense of what's really important. and then really align your business using that language. So recognize the language is really important because, for example, if they say, I want new workloads, then you can say, okay, let me tell you how I'm going to build new workloads. Or if somebody says something like, I want to reach new markets, then talk about new markets. So recognizing the language and what's the priority and aligning your business to that. Again, not artificially, and it has to be organic and it has to be credible, but I think education is a nimble, flexible business model. I think you can do that.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, Niati, GitLab. So you mentioned you moved to GitLab a couple years ago, or you're a year in, maybe on your digital strategy. Some of you know Christine Cookage. So when I reached out to her, I'm like, who's doing digital first strategy? She said, Niati, talk to Niati. And of course, I've known you over the years, so I've heard you talk about it as well. So I know when you got to GitLab, you acted quickly on this. I think you shared with me also was one of the things that you pitched as you interviewed to go to the company. So maybe tell us a bit about what your vision was, how you pitched that to the company, and then some tips and best practices that you can share on how you transformed so quickly.
Yeah, definitely. I think that a lot of what I'm about to share is going to echo what Raghu shared with all of us already. When I came in, we were very much focused on gated learning. What that means is that you had to pay in order to get trained, right? There wasn't an area where you could go in to self-serve. And so I think that works really well for, our well-developed markets where we know we have enterprise-grade customers that are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars with us. However, where GitLab is today is that the highest amount of growth that we're seeing is coming from a certain segment of market that's in there right now. And in order to have the breadth and the depth in like a product adoption and product knowledge, there's no way that we're going to be able to scale through one-to-one interaction, right? And so again, to what Raghu was saying earlier, really just identifying what is that pain point that the company is experiencing. What is the focus that they have at the moment, and ensuring that you're aligning, your programs when it comes to customer education and how can we solve that, right? So what I did is in the first 3 months of coming in, just doing that round interviews, understanding where the business is today, what are some of the big rocks that we're trying to move? And one of the things that we realized is that product adoption at scale was a concern for us, which was leading to churn. And so one thing I always joke around, and it sounds funny, but it's like follow the money to ensure that you're getting the buy-in. So I came in kind of focused on, hey, this is where we are today. And if we continue on this journey, here's the impact that this department and this team can make if we continue going down just the route of like sales targets. However, if we adopt this new methodology, here's the impact that we can potentially have. And that's focus on customer. Again, I cannot focus enough on customer outcomes. When I came in, we didn't have self-paced training altogether. One thing that I always believe in is I want to democratize education. While I can't do it at large scale, I want to do it for the products that I am working for. And so I will always, always talk about free ungated learning for anyone that wants to learn GitLab today. And that is going to be a focus today and tomorrow. That will never change. I always joke that if you're looking for a different strategy, I'm probably not the right leader to run this if we're going to start only monetizing it, because that's not. So a couple of things that we did is when we first launched, it was, again, start small, but build for scale. So what we did is we had these 4 self-paced courses that we knew were core to our product adoption. We quickly lifted and shifted those and built them into full-fledged courses. These courses required an individual to probably go through like 12 hours to complete the course. Is that the way we want to go? Absolutely not. But we wanted to get something out there very quick and nimble out there. So we actually went through all the rev rec process and everything else and got, a LMS approved, got all of these things in there, built it, ensured that our customers knew that there's a really robust ecosystem that no one knew about. right? That we have documentation, that we have discussion forums, that we have an entire developer advocacy program, we have an academia program, all of these pieces, and no one knew about it because they were in disjointed places. So creating that piece was very, very important. Once we built out that with just 4 courses on the platform and launching it, we came back and thought about the learner journey and the learner experience. We thought about bite-sized learning, just like multi-module content delivery. So not just focus on one modality. It's not just about video. It's not just about a tutorial. Again, similar to what Raghu was saying, is that we are a very technical developer-focused company. And so our learners want to learn by doing. And so those are the things and areas that we have optimized for. And again, ensuring that there's data driven approach to how we're making the changes. So CSAT is a really big thing for us. What percentage of our customers are actually using our content?
Awesome. Did you see, as both of you are talking about what you've done and the number of learners you can reach through digital first, then I'm wondering, have you seen that? If you're tracking the data, have you actually seen an uptake or more learners absorbing the content?
Yes. And so in the past 1 year, we actually haven't marketed GitLab University because I am not, I want to build out few additional areas and pieces of it. So we're just slowly, silently, we launched it. We're letting it get absorbed. On average, we're seeing like 20, 30,000 users that are organically coming to our site without any mass marketing. So this next phase that I'm going to be focused on is going to be ensuring that we're advocating and we're actually marketing, all the information that we have for the learners.
Same for you, Raghu? You've seen more?
Yes, same here. We've had a pretty big growth actually in the number of learners. A lot of it, like Niyati described, is on our coding platform where people can actually play with the product directly, and that's what's attracted the most learners very, very quickly. And even in our video-based learning, we've seen almost a 40% jump in the number of learners this past year alone. So we're seeing that big uptick by offering these different modalities for sure.
100%.
Awesome. Yeah, and I do love digital allows you to track all these things really easily.
Yes.
Now a lot of the tool suites and things like that have analytics that you can leverage. Raghu, you mentioned syndications. That's like a whole other webinar. The three of us keep talking. We're like, hey, there's a webinar topic, another topic, another topic.
There it is. Happy to be back. Yeah.
So yeah, which I find the whole idea of syndication interesting as well. So Raghu, when just turning focus and just before I ask this question, actually, just a reminder for those attending, if you have a specific question, just pop it in the chat and I'll weave those in as well. But if we think about the tool sets that you need or that you've needed along this journey with your vision, have you had to adopt different tools, new tools? Tell us a little bit about them and were there challenges that you encountered maybe with a business case for spend, normal for us to be up against, or adoption of the new tools and processes, trying the software, those kind of things?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So, as I mentioned before, I inherited a lot of homegrown tools here when we first came in. And so for me, very deliberately, I wanted to replace all of it, actually. And so I didn't keep any of it, actually. And it was really on the back of that C-suite alignment that we talked about. And the basic message was to take the business to the next level and to scale, like Niyati said, it's really, really important to have best of breed systems out there. So rather than building things, we'd rather just partner with the right companies, that have the right tools. So for us, there were 4 big pieces to our strategy. One was the LMS itself. And so in our case, we chose Thought Industries because we were looking for a platform that can support both anonymous users for frictionless learning as well as logged in users. So we offer both experiences, and having that ability was really important. The other thing that was important to us is that we wanted to have the ability to have custom microsites for different audiences off out of the
Mm.
same system. So the ability to say, okay, I have this for Wells Fargo, I have this for Citibank, or maybe I want to do something by industry segment. I want this for financial services, or I want that for manufacturing. So being able to
Yeah.
slice and dice and provide those custom experiences was important. So that's kind of what drove us to the Thought Industries choice. There are other great ones out there too, by the way, but that's the one that we chose. And then on the hands-on labs, this was an important thing for us because of the developer audience that we cater to. So we chose a platform called Instruct, that's spelled with a Q, and they have a very cool interface where you can have instructions on one side and you can have the actual window on the other side to work in the software,
Mm.
and you can
Oh
cut
yeah,
code and do all that kind of thing. Again, there are
yeah.
several companies in this space too, but what we liked is the integration between them and Thought Industries, because what happens is you start learning on the LMS, you go off to Instruct and do a lab exercise, and then come back to Thought Industries, and all the learning and the metrics are tracked and completion is tracked. So we have that
Mm.
ability to do that. The
Yeah.
third component was the testing component. So we use Examity as our a certification platform. So this is where we offer a proctored exam experience to make sure people are testing, correctly. But now we also offer a badging program, and the badging is non-proctored. So for that, we use Cavion to deliver that. And so
Yeah.
that combination of badging and certification has been a nice blend of a way to accredit learners. And then the last piece is to reach the international markets. We made a deliberate decision to subtitle our videos. So every video is in English, but it has subtitles in 9 languages. And so you could
Okay.
literally flip the language to your favorite language and watch the video go by. And for that, we use a company called 3Play Media to do that. So again, all these pieces are connected, as you might imagine. So there's a lot of integration, but it all works. And we've been very, very pleased with how that turned out.
Awesome. Did you have challenges in terms of, you know, your team's adoption of new tools and processes, or because they had homegrown solutions before they were excited?
No, I did actually. People get attached to things. It's understandable.
Yeah.
But the way I went about it really was to share the vision of where we wanted to go. And I actually showed them mock-ups of what the new site would actually look like, even before a single line of code was written. And I said, this is where we are today. Here is a visual of where we want to be. And,
Yeah.
and and once people saw that, they're like, yeah, I think I want to sign up for that. And so once people intellectually got there, then it was a lot easier. But there was change management for sure. And that's just the nature of the game.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. And those are all great tools that you mentioned as well. So thanks for sharing those. I know everyone likes to hear what different companies are using.
Mhm.
Niati, same question for you. I don't know where GitLab was at in terms of tool sets, or if you also had homegrown when you joined. But what kinds of new tools did you look at, or did you implement them? And did you have challenges getting those in place as well?
Yeah, so challenges in some areas and not so challenging in other areas. So when I came in, we had the system called Edcast, and they were just basically meant for a very transactional, system versus truly like that content and learner engagement platform. And so when I came in, similar to Raghu, I also switched to Thought Industries as just similarly because we have very similar areas of focus. We wanted a portal or an area for just our community users and any enthusiasts that wanted to learn GitLab. We wanted to make sure that was an area for that. But within that same, platform, we also wanted to segment for our internal learners. We wanted to segment for our partners. We wanted to also segment for our, top tier customers, and then customers at large as well, because we have this notion of like, tech touch customers, which they don't have any human interactions in there. So we had these different segments of users that we needed to focus on. And having that LMS be in place for us was really crucial. And I think it's going to continue to be crucial for another few years from today. But honestly, I want to put a very thought-provoking or idea out there. I don't think I'm going to need a LMS in a few years. And it's because of what Raghu was saying earlier, that content syndication is really, really important. So what I'm really going to need in the long term is I'm going to need a very strong CMS that has a content broker, mechanism, so that all of like the content syndications that I'm doing, whether it's on other platforms such as like LinkedIn Learning or Udacity, Udemy, all of those, or whether it is within my customers' LMS that they're using, and making sure that they have a seamless experience while we're still have ability to make sure that the content is high fidelity. So that's for me. When we started out, that was a big conversation that we had. But luckily, because we were using disjointed learning management system, the conversation of consolidating on a singular platform worked really well for us. For the rest of the pieces, we actually had to use the just the in-house LMS author tooling because we didn't have the budget to get high fidelity author tooling externally. And so we make that work. And that's where some of the limitations came for in the first year, because we didn't have that budget. We didn't have that buy-in. We were establishing ourselves within the organization. So more times than not, while we're building out credibility, I'm also continuously advocating for this program and the impact that it has on the overall business. Like if I'm talking to my solution architects, I'm telling them why this program is helping solve their problem, right? If I'm talking to sales, my conversation is very different. When I'm talking to my product team, the conversation is very different. So while my team was busy building all of this out, I was constantly going out there advocating so that we get to this point where I am today, where instead of having a lean mean team of like 6 individuals, I now have a team of 14, and that's going to grow over the next year and a half to a much larger team, because now the investment is there. So a few things that I did in addition to having an LMS is just making sure that we have video recording kits. I know it seems funny in this day and age because we're constantly on video, but having a standardized mechanism of how we build content was really important. The hands-on lab experience. We're actually using a home brew right now, and my goal is to actually move off of that homebrew to a more standardized product that, because we're not in the business of like building an LMS, we're not in the business of building hands-on software. And so we want to make sure that that my internal team is more focused on how we need to get there versus how, what they're going to work on. And then finally, Google Analytics has been really key for me in understanding what are some of our emerging markets, understanding where we need to go. So just those are some things that are on my mind today. And then getting from that 7.5 to 10, it's the context syndication, it's talking about the LLMs, it's talking about data visibility for like customers so that the onus is on them in driving product adoption.
Very cool. I love it. Have either of you, I'm going to throw this question in just because Raghu, you mentioned it, but asking the computer, asking the system, asking LLMs, is that something that you are doing today or working towards doing as an aspect of the training?
Yes, I am right now. So, just to start with a macro point, with AI, rising so rapidly. I mean, ChatGPT didn't even exist 22 months ago, just to give you a sense of how fast the world is changing.
It's hard for us to imagine.
It's hard to imagine. And so the macro realization for me is that not all learners will come to mongodb.com to learn. As much as I would love for that to happen, that's not realistic. So a lot of learners are going to go to an LLM, or they're going to go to a GitHub Copilot or something like that to learn. So we need to be comfortable with the idea of learners being distributed going forward, and you have to find them through partnerships and AI and so on. So for us, what we're doing is we're now actively partnering with these companies to get all of our documentation, all of our university content, all of our courses, all of it essentially ingested into those platforms. And then that way they have this content, they've learned it, if you will. That's the idea.
Yep.
But then for me, that's not good enough, because I still want to see if the LLM gives out the right answer when someone asks. Just because the LLM learns something doesn't mean it's giving you the right
Right.
answer at the end of the the day, right?
Yeah.
So we're actually now investing in some evaluation software to ask upwards of 3,000 questions of LLMs on a routine basis to say, okay, let's ask these questions and then ask and see what the answer is and see if the answer is favorable. If it's favorable, great. If it's not favorable, then we have to really add more content, honestly,
Mm.
and improve the knowledge of the LLM. So my advice to people is don't take LLMs just as sort of literally. You have to sort of work with it to kind of see if it's representing your knowledge, your content favorably.
Yes. Yeah, that's a really good point. Niyati, it sounds like you're thinking about doing that down the
Yeah,
road.
and the main reason is that GitLab as a product, we have something similar to a Copilot. It's called GitLab Duo, and so we have that internal modeling. So some of the upside is that we're actually having that model trained with all of this information that we have. And Raghu, one of the things that you said kind of piqued something that I should be thinking about as I'm looking to implement all of the education content or content that we're building in Duo is this notion of indexing, right?
Mhm.
So we already have all of this, like we own all the properties, right? We own, GitLab.com, university documentation, we own those properties. So in order to, the system inherently, the LLM should be able to just crawl on a daily basis to just make
Mhm.
sure that they're updating and indexing everything so that while we're also ingesting data in there as well. So you bring up such a great point. I'm going to go back to my product team and bring this up as like, hey, we need to think about indexing. Because we have this internal tool that we're building out, I am limited from engaging in any other tool of similar kind. And so that's my limitation at the moment. And that's why it's on my radar for like maybe second half of next year. But we'll see where the conversation lands.
Now you know who to call if you need some advice.
For sure.
Raghu, you might be busy. And I know both of you are very generous with your time, so happy to share. Okay, talking about the organization and people, you both talked a little bit about if you had challenges, but were there specific, key success factors in driving the organization? Raghu, you talked about the change management piece that kind of
Mhm.
continuing to talk about the vision and getting the buy-in from the team, but were there specific roles you needed to put into place or changes to the organization that you needed to make in order to drive this to be a success? And Niyati, we'll start with you.
Okay, sure, not a problem. So when I came in, we did have to go through some changes to ensure that we're aligning the skill sets that we need for the vision that we had for our content. Again, as I'd mentioned, prior to me joining, we were only focused on instructor-led training, and so the modality was that. And having that, go into the shift of this digital-first notion of content development was something that we needed to focus on. So I looked for a content strategist. I looked for really strong curriculum developers. And so I want to make the distinction between like an instructional designer and curriculum developer for, again, for the world that I live in, which is developer focused education. And so the delineation, we had a lot of instructional designers who understood andragogy and things of that sort. But the disconnect that we ended up having is that we needed those individuals to have a very much like a journalistic mentality. So while you are not the subject matter expert on what you're about to quote unquote report on, you're able to ask the right questions to the SMEs and build your gut in order to build the content that resonates and that aligns with it. And so what we did is there were some individuals that we were able to kind of help up level them into that. And then there was others where we ended up bringing new team members on board that were there. So we had that, and then we had a learner experience designer. So it really just focused on the front end of like everything that we were building.
Yeah, that's interesting to think about a journalist type mindset. I could totally see how that plays in. What about as you grow, you mentioned your team will continue to grow. Are you looking for more of these types of roles or different as well?
Yeah, we're looking for more of these roles. And, as we kind of like go towards this notion of not thinking about a centralized learning management system and thinking more about a headless LMS. We're looking to hire front-end engineers and full stack engineers to help us with that. We're also looking to hire true content strategists. And also we are also looking for certification specialists as well, because we want to make sure that our exams are defensible exams.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. Raghu, what about you? I know you coming into MongoDB, you had a great team. Were there changes that you had to make in terms of what people were focused on or certain skill sets that you looked for to implement your strategy?
Yeah, our journey was similar. We did make quite a few leadership changes, and in the end, a vision only works if you've got good people. And so the
Yeah.
the magic is really with the people at the end of the day. And so finding leaders that really bought into the vision and willing to execute was really important. So for me, the way I'm organized right now, I have, I like to say it takes a village to get content out the door. And there's several functional leaders that are really important to me. So one, in no particular order. One of them is an engineering leader, like as Niyati mentioned, and we
Mm.
have an engineering team actually that works with the LMS. So we don't make an assumption that the LMS delivers everything. There's no LMS out there that delivers every feature. So there is some type of integration that you have to do, period.
Right.
So we've built over 20 integrations with 20 other different pieces of software. I only mentioned 4 or 5 of the big ones, but there's others
Yeah.
that are connected. So having an engineering team is really important. The second one, of course, is having a great content team or curriculum team. So we have that with instructional designers. I also have a leader for certification and testing, and because that's a whole discipline in and of itself. Having a video production leader, someone who knows studios and cameras and uh, backdrops and all these things is really important. I also have a leader for enablement, so someone who can actually figure out how to go to market with all this, to make sure that we're plugged into the right channels, the right audiences, the right campaigns, we get the right visibility, and so on and so forth. So it's there's a variety of skill sets that kind of come together to deliver these things.
Yeah.
So we've definitely retooled along those lines, and so that's really helped us quite a bit.
Hmm. Yeah, I like to say a well-functioning learning organization is like a little mini company, but a
It
lot of
is.
people don't know
Yes.
that.
It is. It's a microcosm of a company. That's very
Yeah,
true.
yeah, we have this unique experience as leaders of learning where you have to think about all the aspects. It's interesting actually that you mentioned you have a leader of enablement, but it's not like to enable the internal organization. It's actually to figure out how you enable your learners. So I don't
Correct.
heard of that before, so I like it.
Yeah.
Um, awesome. And then thinking about Niati, the feedback, Raghu mentioned, they are able to get a lot of feedback from the digital strategy. What about you for GitLab as you've been rapidly implementing this? How have your learners reacted and have you gotten feedback from them?
Yeah. So I think because there was such famine, as soon as we put out content, we had very positive reaction, right? So in our first like 8 to 9 months, the reaction was very, very positive. I think our CSAT was upwards of like 95%, right? Now
Mm.
that learners have tasted what we can potentially build out, the hunger is there now. And so what we tend to do is similar to what Raghu was saying, really focus on looking at our content, looking at the feedback that we're getting, looking at those friction points, such as where are they dropping off in the content? What portion of the content are they really focused on or viewing and things of that sort? So again, just like very data-driven approach to ensure that customers are continuing to get the information that they're seeking. And that is my main focus. And so I think right now we're at like 91% like CSAT, but I think that there's definitely room for improvement there. And again, it's that star rating that Raghu was mentioning, like we have that. We also send out surveys. Individuals at the end of each course or each content piece are asked like, what feedback do you have for us? Like thumbs up, thumbs down. And so making it easy for
Mm.
them to connect with us as well.
How often are you looking at that feedback?
So we look at every 2 weeks. We want to
Okay.
make sure that the team doesn't get too distracted with that because we want them to, just really So we basically, every 2 weeks, the team meets, we look at the data and the information and then make strategic moves from there. What information do we want to just let it incubate a little bit because we're not clear about the feedback that we're receiving? What information actually has validity in it? Is it a content change? Is it a UI change? Is it just a perception change? And
Mm,
so we talk about it from these three parameters when we're looking at the feedback.
awesome. Love it. Raghu, in your case, getting that feedback in, are there times where you've had to pivot? You were like, this is what we're going to do. This is the vision. Now we have the feedback and we didn't quite get it right. So let's pivot or change. Maybe describe if that's happened and how you handled that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think there's two big pivots that we've done in the last at least year and a half. One of them is the recognition that we need to partner more aggressively and get more content, work with other companies. So
Mhm.
for us, we originally thought that we could syndicate with LinkedIn Learning and Coursera and get a lot of traffic. And we're very proud of those partnerships, but the reality of LinkedIn Learning is there's a lot of business users on LinkedIn, not a lot of as many developers, who are
Yeah.
actively learning there. So, developers have their profile there, but they're not learning there. And so you
Mm,
got to go to communities where people are learning. So for us, as an example, Free Code Camp is a site that we use, is one of many. And we co-partner and build courses with them, and we're getting massive amounts of traffic as a result of that. So I think the pivot for us was recognizing that we have to fine tune our partnering model to really go where developers are more so than just picking, brand name sites and that.
right. Or you think they were.
Yeah, exactly. And then we also recognize a regional flavor to things. So what you might do in
Mm,
India is a little bit different than Latin America, a little bit different than, say, Eastern Europe. And so we've made some changes along those lines. So that's one. The second pivot, honestly, has been this realization that I've described about LLMs and the need to really put content into the LLMs. And so the way we build content now, it's not just for humans, it's for robots. We have to build it for both audiences at the same time. And so just details like, the way you tag and the way you index and the way you create tables and, all these little formatting things you might not think twice about for a human learner, you have to think twice about for a robot because it may not consume it the way you've described it. So these are the kinds of pivots that we've had to make along the way. And then you mentioned quality. Like Niyati, we look at the scores twice a week. I'm sorry, every 2 weeks also. And the
okay.
advice to my team is, don't react to a small volume of data. If two people responded badly to a piece of content, the sky is not falling, as far as I'm concerned. The sky
Yeah.
starts to, the sky gets cloudy. It never falls. But it gets cloudy when you have enough critical mass of input, and then you start to see, say, a negative trend or a constructive piece of feedback. So just like a restaurant or whatever, one rating doesn't change the world. You gotta take it in balance, and that's why looking at it every 2 weeks has been healthy for us also.
Awesome. As you were talking, I was thinking, through the pandemic, I think for learning teams, life got more complicated because we had to pivot to, digital means, either virtual classes or, video-based learning. And out of that came all this expectation to be able to learn how you want. So
Right.
learning teams had to conquer, how do I put all of this content out in all of these modalities, even if we didn't have the experience? And now comes the robots. We have to think about how to train humans and the robots. So it's probably why I've stayed in learning for so long. It just changes and changes and changes. So it's exciting. But it means for us, we have to become experts in all sorts of different things, which is cool and also hard. Um, okay, a couple more questions. We have just a few minutes left, and of course, I don't see any questions in the chat so far. So if you do have a question for Niyati and Raghu, just pop it in the chat, and I'll try to fit it in. But what do you see? We'll start with Raghu. What do you see others doing in the industry? So I'm getting a lot of questions about what digital first means. Um, and I only know a few examples of organizations that are truly doing it. Are you seeing the same thing, or are you in circles where this is being talked about and happening more often?
Yeah, I think for me, the thing that really excites me about AI in particular is this idea of conversational learning, to truly have a back and forth experience that's high quality where people can learn that way. Because we all learn, by talking. And so chatbots are another way of talking, if you will, and I think conversational learning is a big thing. And, for me, the holy grail of learning, having been in this for a while, has always been if I can create a personalized plan for you, Sarah, that's different than Niyati, that's different from me, that's where it's truly individualized. And this idea of personalized learning has been around for 20 years, but it's really not been truly personalized. It's been here's 5 different learning paths and choose one. It's a bit of a
Yeah.
self-selection kind of model. But now
You personalize it.
yeah, you personally, we're going to give you 5 doors and make you walk through one of them, right? That's typically how it works. But now I can say things like, I know A, B, and C, so tell me what I need to learn next. And
Mm,
that input in plain English language, capturing that and making a prescriptive path out of it, I think is now possible because of AI, because AI it naturally handles natural language, which is what it's about.
yeah.
So I'm very excited about the new frontier of really going after that individualized learning experience and meeting people exactly where they're at on a person by person basis in a scalable way. So, that's kind of where my interest lies, and all the journey we've taken is sort of setting us up to do something like that now.
Yeah. I've seen some examples of people trying to do that learning by conversation. So it'll be
Mhm.
interesting to see a lot of advancements there, and then also how the human reacts to learning from not a human. We'll start to get used to that, but of course the humans are training it, so that's what's funny. Niyati, what about you? What are you seeing, or what are your thoughts for the future?
Yeah, just similar AI, but I think I just have a little bit of I guess, more nuanced take on it. Is that right now we're so focused on generative AI that we're forgetting about the age-old recommendation engines, which is more predictive AI. So again, just want to ensure that we're using AI from both aspects, generative and predictive, in ensuring that we are driving the right engagement, we're driving the right outcomes for our learners. So I definitely see that an area that and not only am I'm going to be focused on, but I'm seeing more, leaders in the space kind of thinking and talking about that, because we don't want to forget what we have already learned, like the machine learning piece, which historically has been more about predictive versus generative, which is what we're talking about today.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Okay, we have 2 minutes, so let's take 30 seconds each. Uh, Three key takeaways you'd leave with the folks on the call today. Niyati, you start.
Sure. The first one is have a clear digital first strategy. What that means is don't focus on just digitizing your existing content. They're two very separate pieces. And the second is like focus on creating scalable modular content. The main reason for that is one, as I'd mentioned, our attention spans have changed, how we consume content has changed, the modality has changed. The other piece is we want to ensure that we're meeting the learners where they are. So we want the searchability of this information, for them as well. So just that would be my second piece. And I think the final one I cannot stress enough is making data-driven decisions in how you're going to drive your strategy forward. What I thought about my digital first strategy at GitLab when I started a year ago on this path versus where I sit today and where I'm thinking. Again, as Raghu was mentioning, my goalpost continues to change, and I don't know if I'm going to ever get to 10. I might always be at 7.5 and think that like there's always this advancement and these changes that are happening. So that's what I would say.
Awesome. Thanks. And Raghu, three takeaways.
Well, I love Niyati's list. So I agree with all of that. And I would add a couple more things to it. One is, that business language that I mentioned before, which is really, casting your business as truly as a business and getting that C-suite buy-in, I think will go a very long way. Also attention to quality, just be very fanatical about quality because once people know that what you have is special, people will come. And that's the idea. The thought I want to leave with all of you is that, we're in a very special place here in education. I mean, it's an exciting place to be, and there's a lot of innovation going on, and we benefit from all the technology trends out there. So more power to all of us.
Awesome. Well, we'll leave it at that. Thank you so much. Both of you I admire greatly. So I appreciate you coming to chat with us today. And have a great rest of the day, everyone. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye.
Everyone.